Most dentists aren't trained to run businesses, let alone scale them. This is the TechDental Podcast for dental leaders who want more than just tips. We give you systems, strategies, and straight answers. I'm Dr. Randeep, and each week I sit down with the operators, AI founders, entrepreneurs, and business leaders who are reshaping what's possible in dentistry. If you want a smarter, scalable, future-proof practice, then this is the podcast for you. Welcome to the TechDental Podcast, where we explore the intersection of artificial intelligence, business innovation, and dentistry. Today's guest is someone who's been at the forefront of the rapidly evolving landscape of digital dentistry, Drynan. Ross is the head of partnerships at Henry Schein One and has spent over 11 years helping thousands of practices grow smarter, faster, and more profitably through tech adoption and behavioural change. We'll unpack how AI-ready leadership, cleaner data, and smart partnerships are shaping the next decade of dentistry. Ross, great to have you here.
Thanks for having me. What a nice introduction as well. Appreciate that.
You're very welcome. So 11 years inside Henry Schein One, that's practically a career in digital dentistry. How has your mission evolved from customer success into strategic growth leadership?
Do you know, no one thinks that they're going to end up spending 11 years in dental software. I think that's the first thing to say. But the key thing that I was sold on in joining the business was we actually make a difference, which I absolutely loved. So when I joined the business, I met with Ben Fluitt, who's now VP of International, and he just showed me some data. And we're a very data-led company. He showed me that prior to onboarding onto then Exact, which was our core PMS at the time, practices recalls were about 38%, but consistently we got their recalls up to 72%, which if you look at our market share, goes out to millions of patients, which means more people go to the dentist because of us. And I know that there's lots of data now on systemic health issues linked to dentistry. So for me, it's always been about that meaning. The tech innovation that we've seen in that time, it's just a tool to help us get towards that vision. So we've got this purpose that is infinite. The technology changes and it helps us to achieve it in a better way, but the vision remains the same. We exist to transform the oral health of the regions that we serve and deliver business success to owners, and finally to make a career in dentistry fulfilling for the teams who work in dentistry. So that's not changed. How we achieve it has changed quite significantly. Just a really quick thing. When I joined the business in 2014, I was responsible for consulting practices on the tools that we had available. And it was virtually impossible to get a dental practice to adopt online appointment booking. Impossible. And now practices are coming to me saying, Ross, we need more AI integrations. So this industry has changed massively, and I'm so excited for that. It's about time that we got caught up and we served the community with easy access to dentistry.
Awesome. No, I love that vision. I think you're right. It's a very exciting time at the moment, not just with tech, cloud computing, but also AI coming in as well. You've worked with thousands of dental businesses. What have you learned about what really drives performance? Because every practice talks about growth, but not everyone achieves it.
Yeah, I really value that question. Do you know what? There's lots to this as well. But one thing that I can call out is we onboard a lot of dental practices onto our PMSs, Dentally and Exact, every year. And I personally have overseen the consulting of about 3,000 or 4,000 practices. And you've got visions, you've got what the owner wants to achieve. And the ingredients are something like a relentless focus on the patient experience, adopting technology to do that, so that when a patient is in practice, you're only focused on them. The amount of times I've been to the dentist before and they're just like, sit down and we'll be with you soon. Half an hour later, someone comes out to get you and the experience is rubbish. If you use technology as part of that experience, then of course you're going to augment it and allow the team in the practice to do a better job. Alongside that, for business success, if you significantly reduce the admin burden on the team, it enables them to ruthlessly focus on what's most important. And for me, the most important things in terms of KPIs haven't changed, right? So it's a mixture of chair time utilization and average hourly rate. And then after that, there's a bunch of KPIs that sit underneath it. But those two things are the core fundamentals, and you must focus on them. How you focus on them has become a lot easier. Surfacing data has become a lot easier. And I can see a world in the not too distant future where you just ask an LLM what's going on in my business and it gives you best practice advice. So that focus, however, the main thing that I've seen is you have to have the right people on the bus. You can't have people in your practice who are against your vision, against your mission, against your values and your behavioural standards. And actually, the difference between a practice that really succeeds with the advice that we give them and those that don't is the leadership in that practice, the change management, how engaged the team are. If you've got the right people on the bus, you've built a compelling strategy, you've rewarded your team and they're bought into your vision for your practice, you will succeed, because introducing new tech and introducing change becomes simple. So I'd much rather have an engaged team that doesn't quite know what to do than an owner who's got this big strategy, but the team are highly resistant to it. So it's still about people, really, isn't it? But without a super engaged team, you're not going to get anywhere. And I've seen that time and time again. We've got the recipe for success. Not all practices succeed, and that is the one common factor. So it's still quite a human problem.
Yeah, no, I second that. I think there's a lot of emphasis around tech, around AI, but that human core is not going to change. And I hear that a lot, where the culture really is key, and culture can make or break the success regardless of technology that's adopted. And you mentioned a lot about, or you've coined the phrase no-fluff business transformation. I love that. When you say no fluff, what does that actually look like on the ground for dental businesses trying to modernize? You mentioned a little bit about culture there. What are the key factors you think play a part in that?
Yeah, I think so. So culture is everything, but the reality is it's not that complicated to succeed. And in fact, consistency always beats intensity, right? Let's use a dental example. If I don't brush my teeth for a year, but I go to the dentist and hygienist twice, you're a dentist, what kind of state am I going to be in? I'm going to be in trouble. However, if I brush my teeth every day and floss and don't go to the dentist for a year, I'll probably be okay. So consistency is everything. So the simple fact of the matter is, if you decide as a team on a small number of things you're going to do extremely well, and then you optimize those things with AI and technology so that you can do them at scale, you will get success. And in so doing, using the technology to get you there, your team will be freed up to spend time on patients, which is the name of the game, right? If you give a great patient experience while they're in the practice, everything flows forward from there. So if you're saying you're a patient-centric practice, the first thing you've got to do is go, we need to look after the business. The no-fluff element of that is, the recipe is fix your chair time utilization, fix your average hourly rate, then look at to what extent your surgeries are actually utilized, because that's another factor. Sort your data out, zone your diaries, and get everything accurate in the PMS, because that's the springboard for success with any software product, is accurate data. If you do all of those things, you land in a place where you'll get success, providing you've got an engaged team. I think there's a lot of AI out there now that is sold on the proviso that it's easy. It is easy if your data is in a good place. If your data's not in a good place, you have to do an awful lot of transformation to get any sense out of it that you can then execute on. So you've got to be mindful of that. And you can be forgiven that over the years, if you use the same PMS for a long time, you can be forgiven for your data to not be great because you learn bad habits. But one of the wonderful things right now is there's a wave of practices moving from client server on-premise PMSs to cloud PMSs. And it gives them the opportunity to do a data cleanse so that they can use more tools and create an ecosystem of tools to serve their patients and the business in a way that they just can't do on a client server PMS, because cloud allows for many API integrations at scale easily, whereas a client server PMS, every integration is a custom integration, so you've got a very limited tool set. So I think those are a few key things. There's so much more that we could talk about here, but I think they're the key elements.
Yeah, no, you've hit on some good points there. I think the key there really is the data, because I think a lot of people now thinking AI is going to come and sort everything out, but really your core data your data hygiene needs to really be on point. Otherwise, all AI does is it multiplies the chaos. So I completely agree with that sentiment there. Let's dive into AI a little bit more now, because there's a lot of noise and every vendor suddenly become AI powered. From your vantage point, where do you see the biggest gap between hype and real operational value?
I actually think there's a lot of value to be had now. There's an awful lot of value to be had now. And one thing that I'm really focused on in my current role is creating an ecosystem of partners who we spend time with and we understand their technology and their offering. And by having that ecosystem, what I'm hoping as the market leaders, it should give our users, our customers, some confidence that the AI that they choose from our ecosystem, it is stuff that actually makes a difference. Even our suppliers, they'll say, yeah, we've got AI in our product, and you go to it and it's basically an LLM that's just plugged on and you just ask it a few questions and it might give you some answers. If your data's rubbish, then there's nothing anyway. I think where AI is most helpful is when it attacks the administrative burden on the team. Let me give you a quick example. When a few years ago, I was having a bit of a rough time personally. I was doing a complete home renovation, which was exhausting, working long hours, just found out I was going to become a father, and I was just, whoa, this is a lot. And one day I had a panic attack, and I'd never had a panic attack before. And so it's quite scary. You think it's a heart attack or something like that. And what happened was a paramedic came and they calmed me down immediately. I think only a human could have done that. So I guess what I'm saying is when you're speaking to a patient about their treatment options, it's pretty damn helpful to talk to a human aided by things like Pole for x-rays and helping patients understand it, and things like chairside to understand the treatment options. Yes, but it's still a human thing. Or when you've got a nervous patient, it's still a human thing. But that means you need time to be able to do that. So what that essentially means is you don't have to sit there at the end of the day typing stuff up, which means you've got more time for patients. One of our partners, Boxley, uses AI for every patient interaction that is transactional. So what time's my appointment? Or a lead comes in and the back and forth there before it gets to a human. They deal with all of that so that humans are reserved for the special things that only humans can do. And I think that's the value. But then it's only a matter of time before that value circle grows. When I heard this, I think it was on Diary of a CEO, Daniel Priestley, I think, but he was telling a story about when electricity was first invented. And he said people were asking, what's electricity for? I get that there's lights, but what is electricity for? And you look forward 100 or so years and you say, it's for everything. Electricity is for everything. And so sometimes we're limited by what we can see because we can only see into the past. Soon, AI will be for everything. And that's okay because it allows us humans to have human connection, which is something we've lost with social media over the last few years. And it enables us to do the special things that only humans can do, which is what that paramedic did for me, for example. And you can easily apply that to dentistry, right? So there's immediate value in the market, in our ecosystem, and with our partners. There's the immediate value, but if you expand out time enough, you are going to see this is going to touch everything, and we should embrace that as a good thing. I think jobs won't be replaced; humans will just be able to be humans more. I think that's where dentistry is headed.
Yeah, I love that co-pilot analogy, and I think that's what I'm hearing from a lot of practice owners, that they're hoping as well that the AI will take over the admin burden, all the tedious stuff that nobody likes doing, but it's really vital for the business, and that actually frees up the people to do what they were trained to do and what they love to do, which is the vision, the creativity. So that's really, I think, the holy grail of AI. And you mentioned a little bit about data hygiene. What are the common mistakes practices make when it comes to data consistency and data hygiene? And what tips could you give them if they want to modernize and they want to get to the cloud and they want to get to the next level in terms of digital transformation? What would be the key foundations for data hygiene?
Yeah, it's a really interesting question. And actually, I think that we should acknowledge that it's really hard because the more people you have in your organization, the more inputs, user inputs you've got, and the more chance there is of variance in user inputs, which then means the data in your system. And even if you look at Henry Schein One, we use HubSpot, for example, and there's 220 people in the UK. Some of the data isn't perfect in that HubSpot instance. But what I think is really important is helping your team understand why the data that they input is important. I think that's basic to say, but it's important. But then my view would be to use the products like your PMS, but other products too, how they're intended to be used, not in a workaround way. So, for example, the best example I can give you is, for me, the key metric in dentistry from a business perspective is chair time utilization. So you've got 5 chairs. What percentage of the time is dentistry happening in those chairs, and what percentage of the time is white space, nothing's going on, lost time? And so how do you get that accurate? The first thing you do is you zone your diary accurately. So you have an open time, close time, you put breaks in and stuff like that. If you don't have a zone diary, the fundamental business metric for your practice, or the one of the 2 fundamental business metrics for your practice, already gone. You can't do it. So I think that's absolutely a kind of a key point. And it's that data mindset. It's like, we need to make sure that this is accurate. Now, one of the things that may happen over the next few years, as more and more practices migrate from client server products to cloud products, is it gives you a compelling event to sort your data out. And I think that's going to help us in dentistry. As humans, we only change when the pain of staying the same is worse than the pain of change. Why would you go to a cloud PMS? One of the reasons is security. It is more secure. But another reason would be to have all of the integrations that you want to have easily. And to do that, you need to migrate your data from your current PMS to your new PMS. And as part of doing that, you need to make sure that data is accurate and clean. So you can actually use the client server to cloud journey as an opportunity to get your data in a good place. It's not easy, but it's definitely worthwhile. And dentistry is competitive. And if your competitors are far more efficient simply because they've got better data and therefore able to use AI properly, and you don't, the longer you leave it, the worse it gets. So the key thing, I think, is to go, when can we actually tolerate the pain of this change? And let's just do it. Because once it's done and your data is accurate, you can then use many analytics tools and AI to understand your business. And then once you understand your business, you can execute on what actually matters, not gut feel, which is quite common in a dental practice. I feel busy. It feels like we never have a minute. And I get principal dentists, practice owners who say, we're incredibly busy. And you look at the data and you say, no, you're incredibly busy. Look at the other chairs in the practice. And I'm sure you're smiling. So you've seen that too, right? So I think this change that we've got coming is an opportunity to sort your data out. Then moving forward from there, just use your tools as they're intended to be used. And any good software tool has AI support that can show you the best way to do anything quickly, and chat support that can show you to do anything quickly. So if you're trying to execute on a workflow, quickly go into support, make sure you're doing it in the intended way, and keep going. I've seen all sorts in PMSs before. I've seen people make up patients for golf and stuff like that. So you've also just got to review it every now and again. A good old fashioned, let's look at what's going on in the diaries in reality. That grant work isn't quite gone yet. AI will solve that eventually.
Yeah, I think I love that, the way that the data hygiene almost opens the door up for not just your kind of day-to-day business operations, but you mentioned that actually then opens the door for you to be able to leverage AI tools that you couldn't otherwise. So it's really a multiplier effect. So yeah, you clean up the data, that has an immediate effect there and then in your day-to-day operations, but then actually makes you more future ready because you can leverage technologies as and when they come out, which is a brilliant way to think about that actually. And for some of the larger DSOs listening, integrating new tools into legacy systems can feel a little bit like open heart surgery. How can they do this responsibly without breaking operations or patient trust? So if they say, for example, they have a legacy system, they want to migrate, they're a busy practice, and they're just worried that things are going to break, patients are going to be affected. What's your process for them?
Yeah, I think that's actually a really important question. I go back to the pain of staying the same needs to be higher than the pain of change. So if you're on a PMS like Exact, which is very feature rich and a really good product, but suddenly you want to start adopting AI tools that are specialized, because the reality is innovation is just going to speed up. The rate of change is going to accelerate. In fact, I saw somewhere that the rate of change in the 2020s compared to the 1990s is like 100 times the rate of change. And then the next decade will be 100 times that. And couple that with the fact that it's now easier than ever to start a software company, there's going to be a ton of innovation. In fact, I think personally, AI has unlocked non-technical minds to the technical world, and therefore some really cool innovation is going to happen. And you're going to want to adopt it, not just like to make it better for your teams, to enhance your business success and make it better for patients. You're going to want to adopt it. Now, if you came to me and said, Ross, we want to integrate these 5 providers into Exact, I'm going to need to go to my engineering team and say, we need to build 5 custom integrations. It's not going to happen, right? It's just, we can't do that. But if you come to me and said, I use these 5 providers and I want to integrate them with Dentally, it's a different story altogether. We have APIs, we have OAuth authentication, which is secure, which means that you can integrate with a lot of third-party tools now. And our vision for this is to have an ecosystem of trusted partners, but also a developer approval process for startups, which ultimately means that you'll be able to choose the tools that you want to use for each specialized use case. So CRMs, AI phone systems, the list goes on and on. You'll be able to use them. And you can't do that at scale with a client server PMS. So as it seems like the logical next step is to move from your client server PMS to your cloud PMS. Now, I know that only about 5% of dental practices change PMS every year. And you might think in other industries, because I've worked in customer success for a long time, so I have a lot of people in my network that I speak to, their churn rate's about 20, 25%. In SaaS, churn rates are much higher than they are in PMS world. And you have to think, why is that? And it's simply because it's quite painful to do. You have to take your team through a change. You have to add card change management. You have to have a little bit of downtime. I think, though, it's getting easier and easier. So we've spent the last 5 years optimizing our onboarding flow and our data migrations. And in 1 year, a few years ago, we onboarded nearly 1,000 customers onto Dentally. So we now can do this at scale, and we can do it almost without pain if we get good engagement, because it's a partnership. So I think now has never been an easier time to move PMS, and the time will come where it's so painful to stay the same that you're going to need to change to get the value that's out there in the market. And there is some really impressive innovation happening that no one software company can deliver.
Yeah, I think I love the whole kind of collaborative mindset that's in this space at the moment, rather than all companies siloed and competing against each other. And yes, there is competition, but I think the collaboration aspect is exciting because it makes a better experience for the end user. You get a better product at the end of it, which is really what everybody's after. And Ross, you and I both know software doesn't fail, people do. Many digital projects collapse, not because the tech was wrong, but because the humans weren't ready from a kind of leadership or culture perspective. From your experience, what separates the high-performing teams from the rest?
I'll tell you how to do it wrong. Tell your team the day before that you're changing PMS. That always goes terribly bad, right? You've got to, in my opinion, some things about business are simple but not easy. And actually, if you think about life, most things in life are simple but not easy, right? So to stay in shape is simple. You exercise 5 times a week and you eat healthily 80% of the time, you'll be in pretty good shape. That's simple, but is it easy? No, it's not easy at all. Like, I can't do it. I'll do my best. And I think that's the same with business. It is simple to get your team off site for a day and create a vision together of what your practice will look like in 3 years. It is simple to then say, what are the 3 things we're going to do in the next year that are going to advance that vision towards becoming true? What is our purpose and just cause in the community? These are all things that are simple to do and build with your team. And if you can get your team building a vision of the world for your practice together, and then an actual playbook for the year of how to get there, you'd be very surprised how much easier change management is at that point. You've probably heard this story before, but I'm gonna butcher it as well. But it's like a ancient piece of wisdom. there's a guy and he's working really hard. He's on a building site and he's slaving away and his brow's furrowed and he's not in good shape. Someone comes over to him and says, "What are you doing?" And he said, "I'm absolutely miserable. I'm building. I'm doing building work." And then they walk down the road. There's another guy working on it and he's smiling. And you're like, "Why are you smiling? The other guy's miserable." He said, "I'm building a cathedral that thousands of people are going to go to and experience community at for the first time in our community. I'm building something." That is what we need, right? We need vision and purpose in our work. And you can create that in with consistency. It does require consistency, but you can create that with your team. And if you do that well, they'll be on board with most changes because they'll be so committed. They'll still get frustrated from time to time with changes and it'll still be hard. But when the why is powerful, the how becomes easier.
Yeah, I love that story. I think it's all about reframing. You can reframe things and it completely changes the experience that everybody has from that. And I saw a stat, I think it's from you, 47% average revenue growth for practices that embrace integrated systems. I don't know whether that's from a piece of research from yourself or your team, but what role does communication and team training play in unlocking that? I think you touched on it already in terms of getting the team off-site and having a vision day almost and culture. But yeah, do you have anything else to say around that metric? Because it's quite an interesting metric, that.
Yeah, I'm a bit of a framework thinker because I like to think, it helps me think clearly. It's simple, isn't it? So we deliver a customer success program at Henry Schein One through Dentally and Exact. And it's simple but so effective because you can open up, I would say 90% of PMSs, and you can find massive opportunities in the data, right? The average practice is 79% utilized. If you just optimize a few things like recalls, reminders, short notice list management, and then maybe integrate some AI to give your team time to do a daily huddle and focus on key things that day, you suddenly see revenue spiking very quickly. And the 47% metric is from that. When you embrace those core fundamentals and you give your team the time to focus on it and the trust to focus on it, you will succeed. So in many respects, it is so simple, but it's hard because real life gets in the way. You've got patients calling, you've got patients in front of you. And I've got a picture on my desktop or I used to when I was in sales, and it was a medieval kind of king about to go to battle. And there's a guy standing behind him with a machine gun, like a big machine gun. And he says, "I don't have time to speak to you. I've got a battle to fight." And that's the world we live in sometimes, especially in dentistry. It's so busy that we don't stop to look at what could optimize us to allow us to succeed. And I think the time has come that we don't really have a choice anymore, and we need to look at alternatives. But if you take it back a few steps, if you execute on the core fundamentals really well, you'll succeed. What gets in the way of executing on the core fundamentals is inefficiency and disengaged teams. If you fix inefficiencies and disengaged teams, execution becomes a lot easier. It's never going to be easy, but it becomes a lot easier. And so if you focus on the basics and do them really well, you'll be able to innovate at a pace that you never have before.
And Ross, let's talk a little bit more about partnerships, because partnerships seem to be the new growth engine, especially as AI reshapes the competitive landscape. How do you see partnerships accelerating AI and automation adoption across the sector? And I've also got to ask, where's that line between competition and collaboration? Because increasingly competitors are integrating APIs as well. So I'd love your thoughts on those points.
Yeah, it's complicated. I think the key thing to say is if you're a vision-led business, and I think we are, I think our vision is really clear. We want to have an impact, despite our size, right? We're getting to be pretty big now. And to do that, you can't be the best at everything. Our CEO, Brian Webley, says the same thing a lot. You can do anything, but you can't do everything. So you've got to be disciplined. And from a PMS perspective, that means the patient journey needs to be really good. You need to have reporting. You need to have a good tooth chart. The clinical experience needs to be good, which is why we're focused on AI clinical notes, for example. But what you can't suddenly do is go, and we're going to be bank, and we're going to be a CRM, and we're going to be a marketing engine. Because the second you do that, you split your focus so much that you don't do anything well. And that's for me where partnerships comes in, because there's so many companies that have niched down to a workflow or something that's vitally important to a practice that we're never going to be the best at. And so if we partner with those providers and help surface them to our customers, we're serving our customers better, right? So there's something in it for our customers and for the innovation in the industry, but equally there's something in it for us. It allows us to be relentlessly focused on the small number of things that a PMS should be really good at. And so that's one thing. That's from our perspective. The competition point is an interesting one. The reality is competition will always be there, and it should be seen as a good thing, not a bad thing. If our competitors build something really cool, that ups our game to go, well, we need to, first of all, is that something we ever want to focus on? If it's not, we'll find a partner who's really niche down and is the best in that space. But if it is something that we see as fundamental to the PMS, brilliant. That means challenge accepted. We're gonna enhance and build up upon that and be better ourselves. And I think the market ultimately wins there because we significantly improve the experience. But to summarize, we can't own everything.
Yeah, I love that. Definitely competition is healthy, and competition taken in the right light and it always improves the end product. And that's the whole point, right? Improving the end product. The end user is the one who's gonna be the ultimate judge. No, I second that. And Ross, we're coming to the end now. I always like to do a quick fire round to wrap up. So 3 short questions, gut answers only. So okay. Sorry to put you on the spot, but here goes. Here goes. Number 1, if every dental leader adopted one mindset shift tomorrow, what would that be, and how would it change the dental industry?
I really simple answer. The core fundamentals of leadership are essential for innovation. Get awesome. Your team engaged in a vision, a strategy, break it down into individual responsibilities, and trust your team to execute. That would allow you to innovate without friction.
And the second one, what's one truth about AI in dentistry that most people aren't ready to hear yet?
I believe that we sometimes skirt around it and say AI is here to help you, it's here, etc., etc. The reality is AI will touch every part of dentistry. Maybe not in the next year, but in the next 5 or 10 years, it 100% will. So we need to accept that, because once we accept that, we get agency over it and we lean in and we learn. All the while we're not accepting that, we're leaning out and avoiding it, and then the problem just compounds. So I think we just need to accept that AI is going to be everything. It's electricity. It's everything. And so lean in.
Fantastic. I like the electricity analogy there. And the final one, what will patient trust mean in an age of algorithms?
Very good question. I think patients already will certainly like millennials and Gen Z, they already trust the back and forth with technology, I think. And probably, if I think about my dad, he spends half his life on ChatGPT and he's in his mid-60s in between golf rounds. So I think the back and forth between us and technology, when it's transactional, is fine and trusted. Where I think we need to build trust in a world of algorithms is we still need human to human conversation when it matters, right? So when it doesn't matter is if I say, what time's my appointment, right? I don't need a human to connect with me. I don't need to trust anyone. I just want to know what time my appointment is because my life is chaos. However, if I've lost a tooth and we're talking about implants, I want to talk to you and understand. And I want to trust that drilling a hole in my jaw, I'm in safe hands. All right. So I think it's more about getting your workflows as a practice and labeling it as human or non-human as your desired outcome. A patient consultation about an implant, human. Questions about appointment times, not human. And you then just go through every patient touch point and label it, and then you work towards optimizing it. I think that's how you build trust, because I don't need, for anything transactional, I don't need to speak to a human.
Fantastic. I love it. That's Powerful stuff. Ross, thank you. That was packed with so many amazing insights. You've given our listeners a clear view of how tech, data, and partnerships can reshape the business of dentistry. Where can our listeners connect with you?
Yeah, I'm on LinkedIn. Jump on there, it's Ross Drynan, or alternatively, you can catch us at pretty much any event. We're always there. So yeah, be delighted to speak. We also have the Dentally community online. So if you just type in Dentally community in Google, you'll be able to join our community where I'll be able to speak to you there as well. Always delighted to speak.
Fantastic. And for our listeners, if you found this valuable, share and subscribe. You can reach us at www.techdental.com, email at info@techdental.com, or drop me a message on LinkedIn. I'm Dr. Randeep, and this has been the TechDental Podcast, exploring the intersection of dentistry, AI, and intelligent business thinking. Until next time, keep innovating, keep learning, and let's build a future of smarter dental business together.
Scaling a business isn't a dream, it's a decision. This is the TechDental Podcast. And if you found value today, follow, share, and subscribe. This is the edge every dental leader needs.